Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fifth webinar on FuelEU Maritime. Welcome from our colleagues here at EMSA, and welcome also from the Commission, from DG Move. First, today webinar will delve into the My Compliance Balance module with some update from EMSA. The agenda is first with the Commission side, with the FuelEU implementation and state of play. Then we will delve into the workflow of the compliance balance module and with the mock-ups of the system that will be shown by my colleague here, Caroline, that is with me. And then we will leave space for questions and answers for the participants. So I will leave the floor to the Commission, to Peter Zaga, and please, Peter, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for Matteo for the introduction. So I will give you a very brief overview of what's been happening related to the implementation of the FuelEU Maritime Regulation. The last time we had this EMSA Move joint webinars, it was in June. So in the last few months, a few progress has been made about different elements of the implementation. So I have 4 or 5 slides and I will run this through you. So first of all, we are developing a number of secondary legislations that are related to the main regulation. We are working on one that is relating to the FuelEU database. This implementing act is not really impacting or affecting the everyday functioning of the database that, as you know, is up and running and various functionalities they are already active. Instead, it's giving a kind of a legal background, laying down rules about access rights, security functions, and visual requirements. So it will be not impacting the everyday functioning of the database. This will be published in October. We are in the final stages of adoption. Secondly, we are also doing a new implementing act on neighboring transshipment ports. We published such an act already in June, but now we are doing a revision. The reason for this is that we want to make sure that the ETS and the FuelEU list, as this list exists under both regulations, are harmonized. So we are having exactly the same ports in both regulations and using the same data for setting the list of these ports. So we are looking at new data, and there's a possibility that further ports will be included in this list that is currently has 2 ports, one in Egypt and one in Morocco, as listed as neighboring transshipment ports. So by December, at the end of this year, this new list will be published. And finally, we are working on an implementing act on OPS communication. This will be really relevant from 2030, when the mandatory use of OPS will be kicking in. But we are already doing various consultations with stakeholders, with ports, with shipping companies on the text of this implementing act. So we are planning for a publishing for the first quarter of 2026. We are also working on 2 guidance documents that will be really important for users, for compliance, for helping to ensure compliance with the FuelEU regulation. Both of these documents are under development now, and we are hoping to publish them in the final quarter of 2025. One of them is a general guidance document to support shipping companies in implementing the regulations, in aiming for compliance. It explains the requirements of the regulation in a non-legislative language. You have to imagine something like that already exists for the ETS Maritime Regulation. So it's a big, very extensive, very thorough document, around 150 pages. And we are developing this in consultation with stakeholders and member states under the European Sustainable Shipping Forum. So one is a general guidance documents, and the second one is something a bit more targeted, more technical, and this will be on the certification of actual non-CO2 ton-to-weight emission factors. So hoping to publish both of these on the FuelEU website in November, December this year. I also wanted to tell you very quickly about, as you're all aware, the developments under the IMO, where there was an agreement on the net zero framework in April, which is an integrated measure. On one way, it's a global fuel standards. On another hand, it's a pricing mechanism. And there will be a vote on the adoption of this of the net zero framework in October. The EU and the EU member states, they are all in favor, and we are urging other countries to vote in favor as well. But of course, it raises important questions in connection with the FuelEU Maritime Regulation and also of the ETS Maritime. Both of these EU measures have include very clear obligations on the Commission to produce a report on the interaction between the IMO and the EU measures, and also to develop potential legislative proposals for alignment. So we will be looking at very carefully, in case the adoption happens in October, we'll be looking at very carefully at the FuelEU ETS net zero framework nexus and see what kind of alignment is advisable, could be done between these measures. The regulations, the EU regulations, they are giving us some guidelines, and I put two quotes from the regulations on this slide. One of them is that we need to try to avoid duplicating regulation on greenhouse gas emissions for maritime transport, and also, but we also at the same time we need to preserve the environmental integrity and the effectiveness of the Union climate action. So we will be looking at, we will be analyzing the connection between these measures, having in mind these two objectives. The next issue is just flagging a few initiatives that are under development from the side of the Commission. These initiatives are supporting the green transition and the decarbonization of the maritime sector. The first one is the Sustainable Transport Infrastructure Plan, STIP, that will be focusing on fuel supply, the supply of alternative fuels, and trying to bring down their price. So there will be various elements in this plan regarding financing, funding, but also other measures that create a better enabling environment for the production of alternative fuels for all transport sectors, including the maritime sector. And there's a publication date for the STIP, which is the 29th of October. We are also working on the European Maritime Industrial Strategy. There was a feedback period during the summer, and the publication of this strategy is planned for January 2026. Here we are primarily focusing on the manufacturing of maritime equipment and ships in the EU, trying to boost our local production in this sector. And finally, there's the port strategy, again aiming for January 2026, and this will look at ports in a comprehensive manner, including the green transition, but also security, economic, and business aspects. And finally, just put on this slide to give you the usual sources of information that are still out there, and we encourage you to consult these. One of them is the Commission website and the FuelEU Maritime, and EMSA has a similar website where we try to collect all information. Currently, there's a Q&A, and then the guidance document that I mentioned, when they will be released, they will be published on this website as well. And on the EMSA website, you can see formal tutorials and webinars on the use of the THETIS-MRV and on the FuelEU. And there's the two usual email addresses that are still functioning. for any questions related to the THETIS and also the FuelEU Maritime Regulation. So that was all quickly from me. I give you back the floor, Mattia, for the continuation of the webinar.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for your presentation. Can you stop sharing, Peter? Thank you so much. Okay, now the second point of the agenda today is related to the My Compliance Balance module. During the last webinar, we presented in June the FuelEU report module with the workflows and the mockups to let the participants understand how to report the relevant information into the system. Today, we will present again the workflow of the compliance balance that is updated, and we will give you clarity on the workflow, on the specific workflow of the compliance balance module with the different actors, and also the specific workflow of the pool. So in the event of poolings, how the actors are supposed to behave in the system in THETIS-MRV. So let me share first my presentation. Okay, I think you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes, implementation mode. So this is the agenda of our presentation. First, we will focus on the My Compliance Balance module, so on the workflow and that it has been updated. Then we will delve into the pool-specific workflow, and then I will give the floor to my colleague Caroline that will explain how the workflow is developed step by step in the system itself in THETIS-MRV. And then the second point of the agenda is about the FuelEU report module, some adjustments and some notes about some specific calculations, in particular for the ice derogations and for the case of Norway and Iceland. So first, this was the slide that we presented during the last webinar. And I would like to focus on this first part of the workflow, where it was supposed to be the verifier to submit the information to the company after that the company communicated the flexibility mechanism choices to the verifier outside the system. This particular part has been reversed. So according to the regulation and also in THETIS-MRV, now companies are active on this, entering the data directly in THETIS-MRV. And then it will be the verifier that will revise the numbers inserted by the companies and will revise, of course, also the verified compliance balance that can be negative or positive. So it can be compliant or not. If it is compliant, it will be still the verifier to issue the document of compliance. Otherwise, this will go to the administering state. So please consider this workflow as outdated, as not valid, and we will also cut the part related to this workflow in the relevant fourth webinar video on our website. And please consider this workflow as the correct one, where you can see, again, let's focus on this part. The first step will be a valid initial compliance balance that is triggered by a verification report verified as satisfactory in the FuelEU report page. So there, the verifier will accept the FuelEU report, will issue a verification report according again to the regulation, so Article 16, and then it will create a valid initial compliance balance. In the FuelEU report, it will be still possible to see also the adjusted compliance balance that considers the previous deficits and surplus. Then, in this moment, the company in the My Compliance Balance page, and then my colleague Caroline will show how this is done in the system. the company will create the compliance balance itself that will be first in draft, and the company at that moment can fill the different numbers of the flexibility mechanism and can submit all the information to the verifier. Then the verifier, once he has on his side the verified the adjusted compliance balance, if he agrees with this, it goes ahead if it is negative or positive. If it is positive, again, this is verified as satisfactory and the document of compliance is automatically issued by the verifier. Otherwise, this will go to the administering state that will calculate the penalties for the companies. The administering state in this page, in my compliance balance page, can calculate the penalty with the relevant numbers that are coming from the verified compliance balance. So there will be an automatic system that calculates the penalties according to the formula in the regulation. This will be the communication of the administering state to the company, and in that moment, the CB, let's say, workflow would be put in penalties under payment status. In that moment, the company can still request to revise the compliance balance if they understand that there was a problem in the compliance balance. And then after that, the workflow basically can start again. If the company accepts the penalties and they think that they are correct, they can pay the penalty and then they can submit the compliance balance to the administering state. The administering state will check the payment. The payment is done completely outside the system. The system is providing as a reporting tool support to the companies, to the administering state, to the verifier, to have the numbers there, to see the numbers there, and to have the right the possibility to report the data. But then the payment of the penalty will be done outside the system, from the company to the administering state. In that moment, then once the payment is done, the company has to upload in the system a proof of payment for the administering state. If the administering state checks this payment and agrees with this, then the compliance balance will be verified as satisfactory with penalties, so the status will be the last one, and the document of compliance will be automatically issued by the administering state. Still, if the administering state does not agree with the payment and thinks that there are some inconsistencies or some problems, it can put it again with penalties under payment, and the company can still reverse or can pay the difference that was considered not correct. So this is the correct workflow for the compliance balance. As you can see, on each final step, there is still the possibility to come back and to put the compliance balance under revision in each step. So it is possible for the companies, for the verifier, for the administering state, also to reverse always the workflow and to come back if they detect an error. In particular, let's focus here, when the verified compliance balance is negative, the administering state can still, even if it's verified with deficit, the administering state can still ask to the system to come back and to put the CB under revision. And maybe there was an error on the verified compliance balance that the administering state detected, and so the company will have this compliance balance still under revision and can act on the numbers of the flexibility mechanism. It can also reverse, of course, the FuelEU report at that moment, because can put under revision also the FuelEU report if there were any port or voyage consumptions that were not correct, and this would have affected also the greenhouse gas intensity. So it is always possible to come back and change the numbers of the FuelEU report and of the compliance balance report. One vital aspect, one fundamental aspect is that the arrangements among companies or the private arrangements are always outside the system, in particular for the pooling that we are going to see in a few moments. And here, as you can see, the company communicates the flexibility mechanism decisions to the verifier. So it is the company, the ISM company, that has an active role on this. They will fill the data in the relevant banking, borrowing, or pooling boxes of the THETIS-MRV system, and then they will submit this information to the verifier. Now let's focus a bit on the pooling workflow, on the pooling requirements and rules first. First and foremost, the pooling itself is its own workflow that somehow interrupts for a moment the workflow of the compliance balance. And it is a specific workflow that is quite complex because the system in that moment needs to deal with different actors for the different verified compliance balance. So a verified compliance balance of one ship can affect another compliance balance of another ship, and this is very complex for the system to deal with, and that's why we are going to show with you which is the workflow of the pooling. But first, let's look at the requirements and the rules for the pooling. First, the ship needs to be within the scope of FuelEU. This means that the ships in scope are the one above the 5,000 gross tonnage and that carry cargo or passengers with at least one EEA port call in at least one reporting period from 2025. And these are in scope of FuelEU regulation. The ship hasn't borrowed during that year, borrowed compliance in the current verification period. So only the ships that haven't borrowed compliance in the current verification period can join a pool. Then the ship needs to be included only in one pool, so they cannot join other pools for the compliance balance. The sum of the initial compliance balance of the ships in the pool needs to be positive at the beginning. So the sum of the different ships needs to be positive, including banking and borrowing of the previous periods that would affect, of course, the adjusted compliance balance. And then the ships in the pool must possess a valid verification report for the reporting period that we are talking about. Let's say pay attention also to two rules that are important. Ships cannot, which had a compliance deficit, may not have a higher compliance deficit. So it means a more negative compliance deficit after the allocation. And also the ships with the compliance surplus may not have, in the end of the pooling, a compliance deficit after the allocation. But let's focus now on the workflow of the pool. So first there are, in this case, one actor that is the starter company. Here is said also the pool company that can request for the pool. Can request for the pool and creates the pool, and the pool in that case is in draft or under revision. In that moment, so the company can submit to the other companies for approval the allocation of the pooling. Also in this moment, the pool company, so the starter company, can still revise the pool and can put it back under revision or draft. Then once this is done, we will have at least one company of the pool that does not agree with the pool, and so this means that the pool will go automatically under revision. Or if all of them have approved the pool, then the pool can continue and the status will change to approved by all companies. Still, also in this moment, for the sake of clarity, for the sake of linearity of the system, the pool company can still revise the pool if an error is detected afterwards. Then, if the pool company agrees with everything, can submit to this pool to the verifier. And once this is submitted, the verifier will verify the pool outcome, verify the allocation, and this will need to verify the pool before approving the compliance balance. So The verifier, once agrees, the verifier can still, let's say, do not agree, can not agree with the pool, and can come back again under revision and ask the pool company to change eventual numbers, or otherwise they can accept the pool, and at that moment the status of the pool would be verified as satisfactory. One important thing at this point is that once the pool is verified as satisfactory, this means that the verified compliance balance of the different ships are interlinked, so they depend on each other. And this means that if an error at this point is detected, then the pool company cannot revise the pool if another company, at least one other company, has already a verified compliance balance verified as satisfactory. Because once the pool is verified, let's say, then all the other ships can go on and have the verified compliance balance verified as satisfactory, with deficit or not. And this means that the pool outcome is fixed. If there is an error and one company wants to go back and revise, all the company needs to have at this point the verified compliance balance in draft status. And only in that moment the pool company can revise the pool and can come back, put this under revision, and then act on it, and then change the numbers, the eventual numbers. This is very important because as you can imagine, in this moment we have interrupted the workflow of the verified compliance balance, of the compliance balance itself, and we are inside this workflow where the different companies are interlinked. And this can create a lot of confusion. That's why we are proposing, we have designed the system as the pool company can revise only if the company has all of them as the compliance balance still not verified. So only in that moment it's possible to come back. So now I will give the floor to my colleague Caroline to give you the possibility to see how these numbers are filled into the system, how we expect the system to work. So please, Caroline, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, good. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Coming back to how to fill the data inside the system. This is a module that is very important to understand and very critical for the FuelEU Maritime compliance. So we will try to make it simpler and try to go step by step. So the compliance balance status diagram, as Mattia was showing in the beginning, it has several steps. I will focus on the different status that it can have. We are talking about draft and under revision. That's when it's at the side of the companies and companies can work on their compliance balance. Then we will have the status to submit it to verifier. Similarly to the rest of the THETIS-MRV system, as you know, most of you have already used it. When it's submitted to the verifier, it goes to the side of the verifier for assessment. You will have then the assessment of the verifier that will see if this compliance balance is verified as satisfactory or verified with deficit. At this moment, we will be on the side of the administering state that will receive a message saying that there is a compliance balance with deficit to be revised. And this part will be between the administering states and the company's management to correct eventually or to pay penalties, to send proof of payment, So this part of the workflow is between the administering state and the company, and will finish the cycle when the compliance balance will be verified satisfactory with penalties. So going a little bit further in the system, you will have a page for the My Compliance Balance. So when you open the My Compliance Balances page, you will see a data grid very similar to My Fleet page that probably most of you know. And here you will have the listed ships that have compliance balance already created. To go into your compliance balance for that ship, you can go in the Actions button, Edit, and then go into the compliance balance page, or here you will be able to create a new compliance balance for a ship that you have under your fleet. So then if you go to edit or to create, you have the CB report or the compliance balance report page, where you have several tabs, as you can see. The CB report particulars and the ship company verifies and administering state details, also very similar to what you already know in the THETIS-MRV. So we'll have all the information about the report particulars, but also from the ship, from the company who's responsible, the verifier that will verify, and the administering state under which responsibility this compliance balance will be. I will be very focused on this presentation on the compliance balance tab, because that's where all the numbers will be fetched after choosing the flexibility mechanism, after choosing which type of adjusted compliance balance you will have available to use the flexibility mechanism. And then, because this will be the main page that will allow you to, it will enable you the borrowing, the pooling, or the banking pages. Also, these tabs include the penalties tab that is more on the side of the administering state. It's a tab that will give all the information that administering states need. This will be the most important tabs that we will go now. I will present to you in this presentation. So the compliance balance reports tab has two sections. The first one about the adjusted compliance balance, and a second that is the verified compliance balance section. In the adjusted compliance balance, as you can see, we will have several information that will be fetched from the fuel report page. Then additionally to this information, like the initial compliance balance, additional to this information coming from the fuel report page, you will have some information coming from previous reporting periods. The first year, of course, we won't have these values because it's the first year of the compliance balance verification verification period, sorry. But this will give you the information that for that ship, what was previously banked or previously the advanced compliance surplus coming from the previous year. Then with these numbers, you will have the adjusted compliance balance that will give you the exact amount that you have, considering what's coming from the fuel report, the initial compliance balance, and considering what's coming from the previous reporting periods. You will have the adjusted compliance balance. Also important to tell you that we have added a field here for the advanced compliance surplus limit. So giving you the value of the limiting borrowing value that you can borrow that year, that will help you to manage if your adjusted compliance balance is under that limit or not. And then other information like the numbers of consecutive years with fuel penalties and number of non-compliant port calls. These two also will only come in 2027 since we are in the first reporting period. From this page, you will be able, with this information displayed for you, you will be able to request for flexibility mechanism. We are going to start with an example, like if you want to request for borrowing. So imagine that your advanced compliance surplus limit is over the adjusted compliance balance. You are able to request for borrowing. And when you choose the request for borrowing here in this list, the system will allow the tab borrowing to be enabled. So Going to the borrowing tab, you will have several information. Don't forget that the user can only choose request for borrowing if the compliance balance, if the adjusted compliance balance is in deficit, and it is not possible to borrow more than or less than the adjusted compliance balance. So what will be displayed here is the value of the compliance balance and the value in positive of the advanced compliance surplus that can be used, and also the information of the aggravation that will come next year for this borrowing choice. So coming back, those values as I was explaining to you. So coming back to the compliance balance tab, this value will be displayed in the verified compliance balance. So in the second section, where you will be able to see that for this case, you, and I don't know, it's coming, but you have down there current VP advanced compliance surplus, and the value will appear here. If, on contrary, you request for pooling, then in that case, the pooling tab will be activated. There are several informations in the pooling tab. You will have all the tools to add ships to a pooling. I just show here in this presentation the main data grid that will present the pooling, but in that tab you will have the means to add ships, to invite ships to be part of the pooling, and also the part that will be the assessment of the pooling by the verifier. Stressing more this data grid that gives you the information about the pooling, you will be able taking into account the principles of the pooling process. So what Mattia already said, that the pool configuration will need to be approved by all the companies, and only after the pool is approved by the companies, the CB of the pool can be will be adjusted, and the verifier will be able to verify the pool. It's important here just to remember there are some buttons that will be available for the company of the pool, the one that started this pooling. Other buttons will be more for the companies that are part of the pool, so that they can approve or disapprove the pool. And then the buttons for the verifier. So the main company will submit to the verifier, and the buttons for the verifier will be enabled so that he can or verify, put it as verified, or submit back to the company. The numbers will be editable, some of them, and with this you have a good view of the pooling, and the values and the total compliance balance will appear when assessed by the verifier. So coming back to the compliance balance tab, this value will appear in the verified compliance balance, the value of the current verification period pooled. At this moment, you will have the information of the verified compliance balance displayed depending on if it was a borrowing or a pooling or any of the choices that you made for the flexibility mechanism. And if this verified compliance balance is positive, the company will also be allowed to bank. In that case, you have a request for banking window, and you can choose the banking that will enable again the tab of the banking. So just quickly show you the banking tab. The banking tab will have the value of the compliance balance and the possibility for the company to choose how much they want to bank. So this will be fetched in the verified compliance balance with the current verification period banked surplus, and this will be done. You can submit it to the verifier. In case the verified compliance balance is negative, the verified compliance balance will be presented to the administering state, which the company is attributed to for the calculation of the penalties. In this case, the tab of the penalties, and for some reason I lost the penalties tab that I had it in my presentation. Can you show it eventually, Mattia? I'm very sorry.
Yes.
For some reason.
This one.
The one before that one. Yes, that one. No, it's not that one.
And this one.
No,
This one.
no. Okay, I'm very sorry. For some reason, I lost my penalties tab. So, but it will be in the presentation that we put online. So the penalties tab basically will show the administering state the information they need. So the adjusted compliance balance, and will also display the calculation for the administering states, the calculation of the penalties based on the regulation. The administering state can always correct that number if needed. This will be submitted to the companies. The companies in that page will be able to upload a proof of payment, and this will be the way that the administering states can manage the compliance balance and verify it with penalties if needed. So coming back to our main, let's say the idea of the compliance balance page, we have to get through all the tabs. So the system will not only support the users with the penalty document for administering state to download the compliance balance report when it's done and verified with penalties or verified as satisfactory. And most important, you will be able to generate the document of compliance if verified with satisfactory, generated by the verifier. If with penalties, so verified with penalties, it will be generated by the administering state in the system. So on my side, I'm very sorry for the tab. I will put it. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. So I will share again my screen for the last part of the presentation. Perfect. So this was the last slide from my colleague Caroline, where you can see that the penalties, the penalty document and the compliance balance report will be shown here, also with the document of compliance that then will be, let's say, the legally binding part of this page, of the compliance balance page. So all the documents will be here. This, for what concerns the development of the modules, as we showed during last webinar, the FuelEU report is already live with the initial compliance balance generated in the FuelEU report module. And you can see there also the adjusted compliance balance already, because it's possible to see how much comes from the past. So it's already possible to see, and this is calculated by the system. So it's possible to see the adjusted compliance balance. Then the compliance balance module itself will be developed and out live in February 2026. The compliance balance module will show at the beginning the initial compliance balance with the previous period, and then will allow the companies and the verifiers to apply the flexibility mechanism with the result that is the verified compliance balance that can be positive or negative. And then if there are penalties due to be paid, there is the possibility to record them in the system, to say how much they are, and to record also the proof of payment. And then there is the document of compliance issuance. It's also under development, and the additional check page where the administering state can correct eventual numbers, eventual figures of the FuelEU report, of the FuelEU verification report, and of the calculations of the greenhouse gas intensity and the compliance balance. And this will be done, this will be possible for the following 2 reporting periods by the administering state. And this is being developed by our team. Now I would like to focus about back about the FuelEU report page, and particular on the ICE derogations. We have a problem that was raised by some tickets in our help desk, mainly. The FuelEU report module is calculating the ICE derogation considering the whole energy and distances. I have created here a scenario where we have 5 different activities, 5 different voyages, because the ICE derogation are based upon the voyages, not only. So the system is considering all the energies that are reported regardless of the differentiating criteria of the activities itself, if it's an intra or an outgoing voyage, if it is an incoming voyage, or if that energy is exempted. So the system is currently considering all the energies to evaluate which is the consumption and the additional consumption of the ship in case it is navigating in ice conditions. So we were considering the whole energy and the whole distances. But to align with the European Sustainable Shipping Forum, in particular with the Workstream 1 report, where I have we have here a screenshot of the part related. The distance and the energy that needs to be considered are in scope. The one in scope. So here, for example, you can see that the different activities are through ICE or not, are with the differentiated criteria or not. Then we have here the energy, so the quantity of the energy that have been reported, and the energy in scope under for this particular voyage. For example, for voyage number 1, this is an intra-EA voyage, so it means that, and we don't have any differentiated criteria. It is a navigation through ice, so the energy scope is the same, is 810. For example, the second one, you have an incoming voyage, so it's an international voyage that is arriving in Europe, so it means that the energy scope is half of the energy reported. Then you can see also and this is the same for what concerns the energy for the other voyages. Then let's consider also the distance. The distance, it can be regular distance, so if it is in open waters, or a distance of navigation in ice conditions. So I've described here the distance regular and the distance in scope. That it is, for example, for voyage 2, it's half of the distance. For the voyage 5, again, for example, it's an oncoming voyage. So the distance is only in ice, it's through ice, the navigation, and it is 68. But the distance in ice in scope is 34 nautical miles. So as you can see here I have described the voyages with the energy and the energy in scope, and with the distance and the distances in scope. This is let's say the resume of the calculation. So currently in THETIS-MRV, and it's not correct, the calculations are done considering the whole energy and the whole distances to calculate basically the consumption of the energy per nautical miles in open water, and then to see which is the additional energy due to ice conditions, and that needs to be considered. So as you can see here, the system will calculate these numbers and will show these numbers that are not correct. In THETIS-MRV, and this is expected to be developed and to be implemented very soon, here you have the correct calculations according to the Workstream 1 again, that needs to be considered by the company when it's reporting and by the verifier when it's verifying in this particular case. But I think that this calculation can be done for all the possible scenarios, let's say. Here you have also a summary of the formulas and of the meanings of the different energies and the factors that I have used to calculate this. And I would like also to show an example. So I have implemented in the system the same scenario with the same distances and the same energy. So I have put the exact amount for heavy fuel oil in tons to have these gigajoules of energy. And here we are, in this case, in the FuelEU report page. So I have submitted a FuelEU report, a full FuelEU report to the, as a company. I have submitted this, I have created the full FuelEU report. And you can see here the voyages that are the same as the scenario that I've described. And in the annual energy consumption, you will have the same number that I've showed that are not correct. In fact, we are talking about 7,811 as the final amount in scope with ice derogation. The amount of energy in scope was 9,537, more or less 0.75. And then the additional ice that is not correct is 1,725.87. So this additional ice, energy additional ice, is not correct because it's considering the whole amount of energies and the whole amount of distances. What we are replying in the help desk and what we suggest you also is to be aware of this and to run the calculation outside the system, to run the right calculations for the ice derogation. As you can see here, the energy amount considered total is this 7,811.88. This is also the other amount regarding the ice derogations. Again, additionally, for what concerns Norway and Iceland, we know that there are delays in the legal process of incorporating the FuelEU Maritime Regulation in the European Economic Area Agreement. And the application of the regulation does not apply in Norway and Iceland for the time being. This means that until this process is completed, Norwegian and Icelandic ports will be regarded as third country ports in FuelEU context from 1st of January 25, until the incorporation of FuelEU in the EEA agreement. However, in the anticipation of this amendment application, THETIS-MRV is still currently calculating the energy in scope by considering these countries as part of the European Economic Area. This is because the system is a system that is dealing with two regulations, in this case, ETS and FuelEU, and let's say the common data are also the one related to the member states, also to Norway and Iceland. What we suggest in this case is that while awaiting the completion of the legislative process, we kindly suggest the relevant companies that are dealing with voyages in Norway and Iceland a temporary solution. So to perform the calculation and the energy assessments externally, and then manually adjust the final values in the total stub of the FuelEU report page. And this will ensure that Norway and Iceland are treated as non-EEA countries. And this is all by my side. I will stop sharing my screen. And I think that now we can focus on the Q&A part of our webinar. So I think I will give the floor first to the Commission because I need some time to have a look at the questions. If you forgive me for this, but I'd like to look at them, and maybe I can ask the Commission to reply some questions that are related more to the legislative part of the webinar. Don't know if Peter or Jose is on, otherwise.
Thank you very much, Peter. Mathieu. I will go ahead and reply in some questions. First of all, thank you very much to the EMSA colleagues for delivering the presentations and the useful clarifications. So we saw many questions related to the payment of the penalties and also issues related to the allocation of the administering states or the companies to the administering states. Just to clarify a bit what is going on and what's being planned, as you know, there is a divergent responsibilities regarding the shipping companies for FuelEU and MRV. There is already, we did the assessment, there are already some companies under FuelEU that have ships for responsibility for FuelEU that don't have ships under responsibility for DTS, which means that if we would use DTS list of attribution, there would be companies that are not attributed to the administering states. Also, we need to consider if the company doesn't have the registration in the country, on the EU countries, this means that the attribution needs to be with the ships under their responsibility for FuelEU, and the fleet under FuelEU is different from the MRV ETS. So the list will be, there will be a list specific for FuelEU. If the company has and is registered under the EU, the attribution will be the same because it is based on the first criteria for the attribution. If the fleet of the company in terms of the years is stable, this means the attribution will be the same. But there are companies that are attributed for ETS that doesn't have the responsibility in FuelEU, so they will not appear in the list of FuelEU, and also the missing companies that are don't have ships under THETIS-MRV will be further included. So it is not expected that the list will be significantly divergent from the ETS-MRV, but due to the missing elements here, we need to have a dedicated list. The list will be shared in THETIS-MRV, and it's planning to be shared with the revised list for ETS-MRV that will come early next year due to the revision that is foreseen, and then it's foreseen to be updated every 2 years, similarly to the THETIS-MRV, making sure that there is as much as possible consistency between the attributions. Regarding the penalties, as soon as we have the attributions, we will try to release publicly also the list of competent authorities and the point of contact for the competent authorities. And as it was already replied, the payment of the penalties is to be developed and described at national legislation. So after the attribution of the list, you should reach out to the specific competent authority of the administering state to understand exactly how it will be the payment of the penalties, having in mind that as it is the design of FuelEU Maritime, it is expected that the vast majority of the strategies for the compliance would be through the flexibility mechanisms or through the use of sustainable fuels instead of FuelEU penalties. Nevertheless, you'll have the contacts to reach out in case there is penalties to be paid and how it should be done. There were also some questions about the sustainable fuels, the certification, how to prove the certification of sustainable fuels. And this is something that we are working on the development of the Union database and to improve what is on the Union database to make sure that through the Union database, the certification and the proof of the compliance or sustainability can reach the shipping companies. This doesn't mean that the shipping companies will be required to register in UDB, but they will be allowed to do that if they want to confirm that there is the information, or that the information being provided for there is consistent and in the UDB, and similarly to the verifiers also to assist them, not as a mandatory, but as a voluntary tool that they can use to confirm the proof of sustainability. And there will be, we are working closely with EMSA colleagues and the SRT colleagues with the Union database to see exactly how we can reduce the administrative burden, having reusing the information already reported in the THETIS-MRV to conceive access rights also to the Union database, and also to share some information between the two systems in both directions. This is being worked at the moment, and we plan to have communication activities in the coming months to clarify exactly what will be these functionalities, and also to clarify the issues of POS and POC, proof of compliance, although when we are talking about the paperwork, what is already clarified for MRV ETS purpose in GD1, the comprehensive guidance documents for MRV and ETS, and that the clarification that is there should also be understood that the same approach that we are having for FuelEU, meaning the proof of compliance, it is a responsibility for the competent authorities of the member states to accept the proof, what should be the compliance documents to be accepted, but what it is written in the MRV ETS GD1 should be also understood as a possible way for FuelEU Maritime. Peter, don't know if you have and want to address some.
Yes, thank you, Jose. Maybe 2 or 3 smaller points that were questions about. One of them is relating to Norway, whether we have any information when the problem will be solved, when Norway will apply the regulation. The answer to this is no. Unfortunately, we can't say any date. The issue is with the EEA side, and we don't have any predictions, any forecast when Norway and Iceland could join the regulation. There were indeed some questions about penalties, which is, as you said, is lying with the member states, and the question about revenues. So we will, in every 5 years, every member state will need to do a report on the way they are spending their FuelEU penalties and revenues associated with the FuelEU. So the first report will be arriving in 2030, and then every 5 years afterwards. And there was a question about outermost regions, the application of the regulation for outermost regions. So what the question refers to is that member states, they have the opportunity to use exemptions for trips related to certain outermost regions. And we received a number of information notification from member states for the use of these exemptions, and they are collected on the DG Move website on the FuelEU database. So you can see there a list of these exemptions that were reported to us, and they were also published in the official journal of the European Union. So maybe these quick ones that are more political and less technical related to the THETIS-MRV.
Just to complement here on the regulatory framework for what is the borrowing and the pooling and the verification activities associated. So there was a question about borrowing, if it is possible between different ships, and this is not foreseen in the regulation. The regulation is very explicit. The borrowing is only about an advanced compliance surplus of the same ship. It's not possible to use the borrowing and pooling in the same year. And so if a ship decides to borrow from the same ship compliance balance of the next year, he cannot participate in a pool, neither he can use borrowing with different ships. This is quite explicit in the article of the regulation. In terms of the verification responsibilities regarding the pooling, so there should not be double verifications activities regarding the compliance balance. So the ship verifier is responsible to confirm the compliance balance before the entering in the pool. The pool verifier, that should be only one verifier for all ships entering in the pool. The pool verifier is responsible not to confirming that the verified compliance balance is correct, because that was already previously verified. The pool verifier has specific responsibilities to check that the allocation of the compliance balance is following the rules established in FuelEU Maritime, and there are specific rules on how the allocation should be done. There is some flexibility for the companies to decide how to allocate, but for example, if a company is entering the compliance with a positive compliance balance, the company cannot get out of the pooling with a negative compliance balance. So the allocation and the rules for the allocation, it's to be confirmed by the pool verifier. He should confirm that the companies can participate in a pool, but the value to enter in the pool, if it was certified by a different verifier, it should be accepted as a valid value for the verification. So after the allocation and the confirmation that the pool was valid, the ship compliance balance will return to the ship verifier that has afterwards the responsibility to issue the document of compliance if it is if there is no penalties to pay. So there is specific responsibilities for the pool verifier, but it should not go beyond the activities that were already made by the ship verifier. So there should not be double verification of the same procedures. There should only be complemented by verification activities specifically related to the pool in itself and how it should be made, the pooling process. Thank you. And giving back to Mattia that may have some clarifications to do.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Peter, for your replies. Yes, I collected some questions from the queues. So the first question is, a pool consists of two ships with different surplus values. For example, 40 for ship A, 20 for ship B, and minus 10 for ship C. How is the surplus, that is 50, distributed among the three ships for the following years? Ship C will have no surplus, while ship A will have a surplus of 32.33, and ship B will have a surplus of 16.66. Okay, now the distribution, the allocation of the surplus, that in this case is 50 tons of CO2 equivalent. We are always talking in terms of compliance balance of tons of CO2 equivalent. In this case, it can be any. So the rules are that ship C cannot have a compliance balance lower than minus 10. Ship A and ship B, that are starting from 40 and 20, cannot go under 0. The rule is this one. Ship A cannot have a compliance balance negative, and so ship B. Ship C instead cannot have a compliance balance that is lower than minus 10. But this means that any allocation is still possible. I hope this clarifies about the pooling rule. Then there is another question related to, again, the pool. How can a vessel participating in a pool bank credits for the next year use? So once, as my colleague Caroline has showed, once a vessel is going out from a pool, they can have a positive or a negative compliance balance. And still in the banking sub-tab of the My Compliance Balance page, they can bank their credits. Pay attention to the fact that once you have a verified compliance balance, you can bank all of it or part of it. If you don't bank part of it, then you will lose in the following years this banking. But if you bank the whole part of the verified compliance balance, this banking surplus does not have an expiration date. So this means that you can use it in all the following years. And there is no expiration date again for the banking surpluses. So you can use a banking surplus in 2035 and you banked it in 2026, for example. Then there is another question. If we, as an ISM manager, an ISM company, I suppose, take over one vessel which has called EU port from other ISM company, who will be responsible for the penalty for the period before the takeover. So, according to the regulation, Article 15.4.c, the responsible ISM company for the submission and for the compliance under FuelEU is the company that is in charge of the ship on the 31st of December of the reporting period. So this means that the company that will be responsible for the payment, for the compliance under FuelEU Maritime is the company that is in charge on the 31st of December. And this company has also the responsibility to submit a full FuelEU report. This means that the responsibility will be only with that company to submit all the information and all the data for the whole reporting period. And they will be also responsible for the compliance under FuelEU Maritime. When a vessel is sold during the reporting year, is the penalty settled by the seller for their period of responsibility, or is the full year penalty transferred to the buyer for settlement? I think that this question has been already answered by my previous reply. It will be the company, the ISM company in charge of the ship on the 31st of December of the reporting period that is responsible for the compliance under FuelEU of the ship. And the compliance means the submission of the FuelEU report, the application of the different part of the regulation. So the compliance of the ships is also the payment of eventual penalties. After pooling, can a vessel with initial compliance deficit end up with a compliance surplus and after verification of that pool still bank the compliance surplus? Yes, the ship can go out from the pool with the verified compliance balance that is positive, can bank that surplus. There are no problems with this. Then again, when pooling, what happens to any surplus remaining? This is the same question, let's say same type of question. It can be banked and by that ship. Then again, if a ship has already submitted a partial FuelEU report and removed the vessel from their fleet, how can they add the ship to the pool? Do they have to ask the new shipping company to release the ship back to the previous company, THETIS-MRV? So if a ship has already submitted a partial FuelEU report, this means that if it is partial during a reporting period, then the new company will be the next one responsible for the FuelEU submission. If the new company is in charge of the ship on the 31st of December, then they will be responsible for the full FuelEU report. But the ship that was in charge, the company that has submitted the partial FuelEU report will not deal with the payment or with the penalties related to their period. This should be taken into consideration before of the sale. We suggest to the SM company before of the sale between the two companies. So they need to take into consideration which are the provisions of the FuelEU Maritime about this, and should take this into consideration in their private agreement. If a ship has already submitted, and then again, sorry, the wrong ice derogation calculation, are they only wrong for the ships actually trading in ice, or for all ships with ice class, independent if trading in ice or not? They are wrong also for the ships that have an ice class and are not navigating in ice conditions, because the calculation of the additional to ice class is equal to 0.05 multiplied by the e-voyage totals minus the in ice conditions. So this means that that energy needs to be the one in scope, not the whole energy as it is calculated currently in the system. So yes, the answer is yes. Even the calculation regarding the additional to ice class are wrong in the system, and we suggest to look at them, take care of them, and consider only the energies and the distances that are in scope under the FuelEU regulation. And I have run out of questions here. I need to again look at them, so I will give the floor back to the Commission.
I will just, I saw some questions was about when will this be deployed? So just to tell you that it will be on the beginning of 2026, this version of the THETIS-MRV with this page. Anyway, you can always go to the support page in our THETIS-MRV platform, and there's what is planned for the future releases and the list of the dates that are provisional for the deployment. So any doubt on this? It's there. Thank you.
So if I may, Mattia, so going back to some additional questions that were raised, there were some questions about the responsibility at company level. Just to clarify that the responsibilities under FuelEU Maritime is always at ship level. The payment of the penalties are always related to a ship. And then at the end of the payment of the penalties, if there is penalties to be paid, there is the issuance of a document of compliance to a specific ship. So there will be no aggregation of responsibilities of the ships on the fleet for at company level. And that is the approach of under DTS, following the same approach that is followed for other sectors of DTS, but that's not the approach that we follow under FuelEU Maritime, where the compliance is always at a ship level and not at the company level. There is additional questions regarding the payments and the opening of the MO accounts. The MO accounts under the union registry is dedicated for the ETS compliance. So again, for issues related how it will be done, the FuelEU payment of penalties, it is up to the member states to decide and to implement specific provisions for FuelEU Maritime, but the opening of MOA and the Union Registry is dedicated to the ETS. It's not foreseen for FuelEU. There is also some questions of the extensions of scope in terms of ship size. The review and the possible review of FuelEU Maritime, it's foreseen for 2027. So it's not foreseen any change of scope before the review. Of course, as Peter already mentioned in the beginning, dependent on the adoption of the IMO Net Zero framework, we need to take in consideration what is happening there. And following that assessment, previous change in the regulation may happen, but we need to wait for the assessment study before taking decisions of what will happen. There are some questions also regarding the offshore ships. So the offshore ships treatment under the MRV ETS was changed when the ETS was extended for when the MRV was extended for the ETS scope, and there was a change in the definition of the port of call that includes additionally relief the crew for the offshore ships. This was not done for FuelEU Maritime. FuelEU Maritime definition of the port of call maintains the port of call definition from the MRV version, from the initial version of the regulation from 2015. So the scope and the offshore ships under the scope of FuelEU Maritime remains the same from the previous version of the MRV. So the additional voyage in the scope related to the treatment of offshore vessels that includes voyage related to port of calls where there was a relief of the crew, it's not included in FuelEU Maritime. So the reporting obligations and the energy in the scope remains the same as previous before the amendments in the MRV regulation. So there is no change in terms of the offshore. Regarding the port of calls and how to declare it, we are following the discussions on the MRV ETS and what should be considered a port of call with this specific exemption of what is a relief to crew. The remaining definitions on how to determine a port of call, namely the existence or not of a UN low code, we will follow the same procedures under the MRV ETS, and the clarifications that exist there related to the existence or not of a UN low code under the MRV guidance document 1 should also apply for the scope of FuelEU Maritime. This was the question that I have seen. Don't know if EMSA colleagues want to address additional questions.
Yes, thanks. Thanks so much, Jose. There is a question related to the borrowing limit. So how is the borrowing limit calculated? The borrowing limit is calculated and is equal to the 2% of the multiplied by the greenhouse gas intensity of that ship in that reporting period multiplied by the energy in scope. So this is the limit. It's the 2% of this number, greenhouse gas intensity multiplied by the energy in scope. And it's possible to borrow only the exact amount of the adjusted compliance balance if negative. If the adjusted compliance balance is higher than this limit, you cannot borrow during that year. I hope this clarifies. Then, but can I bank the surplus of ship B and use it for ship A next year, or can only the ship which would bank a surplus use the surplus next year? Should it be efficient? Sorry. So the question is, can I bank the surplus of ship B and use it for ship A next year? The answer is no. You cannot bank and use this banking surplus for different ship. You can use only at ship level, as the Commission was also mentioning. Yes, I think this is all about this question. You can use the banking surplus only for your ship. That banking surplus can be used, for example, in a pooling the following years. And in that pooling, you can exchange the banking surplus, but you cannot automatically, let's say, transfer this banking to another ship during the same reporting verification period. In the next verification period, you can eventually sell that banking surplus to another ship, creating a pool, for example, with only 2 ships in this case. But remember that then you can join only one pool. So your pool slot for that verification period would be used only with another ship, in this case, ship B and ship A. Then there is another question. Vessel must have the document of compliance to access pool. What happens if the vessel doesn't call EU in 2025? So she has a no FuelEU document of compliance. In 2026 issued and thereafter wants to join pool in 2027 without TOC. It is possible to join a pool if the previous year you don't have the document of compliance. In the requirements of my slides, there was the necessity of having a verification report verified as satisfactory to activate the initial compliance balance. So it is related to that specific reporting period, not to the previous one. And with this, I would like also to mention that this webinar, as the old ones, are being recorded and will be available on our website and on EMSA website, together with the slides that will be shared with you with all of you after the meeting. And I haven't had time to look at other questions, so I think I don't know if the Commission wants to address some other question in the meantime.
Yeah. Just very quickly, some questions regarding to the pooling, because there are many questions still popping up on the pooling. So the pooling is a very flexible tool. It doesn't restrict the company of the ships. Companies can pull different ships from the same company. The company can be different, can be ships from different companies. The verifier can be different. So it's a very flexible tool, and there is no requirement of having the same company, the same verifier. It can be or cannot be. There are specific rules of having a verified compliance balance. There is this question about if there is no port of calls, if there can be a FuelEU report and the verification without fuel consumption in the same period. We don't think that the regulation does not allow that provision, meaning if you were already in the past in the scope of the regulation and you have a surplus banked, even in a year that you did not have a port of call, it would be possible to have a FuelEU report that declares that there were no energy in the scope for that specific period. However, there are banked surplus that the company could enter in a pool to use the bank surplus. The same thing for a company that in 1 year decided to do a borrowing in the following year, and in the following year for operational issues, the ship didn't come to Europe. There were no energy in the scope, but instead of having to pay the penalty related to the borrowing, it would be possible for that company to issue a FuelEU report without energy in the scope for that specific period, but with still an advanced compliance surplus from the previous year, and then the company could enter in a pooling to have the possibility also to comply with the regulation using that flexibility mechanism, even if the company didn't have the port of call in Europe. But it would be important for the company to follow the process of the verification, because it needs to be verified that the energy used in the scope is in fact zero, and it needs to be verified to ensure that there is conditions for the pool verifier, that there is the confirmation by the ship verifier that the company and the energy in the scope and the emissions associated is in fact verified by the ship verifier. So, just to clarify these issues regarding the pooling, and just to make sure that there is enough clarity on this issue, there was there are other questions popping up. I think at least the questions that I have seen, they are addressed in our guidance document, and we expect to release it in the coming weeks. And you will see that many of these questions are already addressed there and should clarify many of the issues that are appearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you to the Commission. Also by EMSA, thank you for having attended this webinar on the compliance balance module. We think that we agree with the Commission that the FuelEU document, guidance document, will be very helpful to reply many questions that we have received today. And so we hope that this will give clarity on these questions. Again, thank you so much for having attended this webinar. The video has been recorded and will be available for you on the EMSA website. On the EMSA website, there will be also available the tutorial to submit the FuelEU reports in the FuelEU report page very soon. And we keep the EMSA website updated for all the information and support we can give you. So again, thank you for the webinar. Thank you for having attended this, and I wish you all a very good morning or evening, depending where you are in the world. Thank you so much.